So welcome everyone to meeting number 40 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Health. The committee is meeting today pursuant to Standing Order 106 sub 4, as requested by 4 members of the committee, to discuss a work plan until the summer recess. Before I recognize Ms. Rempel-Garner to move her motion, I would like to acknowledge and recognize that Ms. Sidhu's Private Members Bill C-237, an act to establish a national framework for diabetes, just passed third reading in the House. So on my own behalf, and since it passed unanimously, I dare say on behalf of the committee as well, congratulations indeed. Ms. Rempel-Garner, if you please, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just needed to have a sip of water before I started with this missive. So I move that the following regularly scheduled meetings of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Health be programmed as follows. On June 4th, the committee undertake one or more 3-hour meeting regarding patented medicine prices review board guidelines, that each political party represented on the committee be given leave to invite 2 witnesses of their choosing to provide testimony on the topic for this meeting, and that upon the completion of this meeting, the analysts of the committee be directed to commence the development of a draft report based on witness testimony and written submissions received by the committee on this subject to date. On June 7th, 2021, that the Law Clerk and Parliamentary Counsel, the Clerk of the Privy Council Office, and Canada's Privacy Commissioner and Canada's Information Commissioner be invited for the duration of a 2-hour meeting to discuss issues related to, but not limited to, the production of documents regarding the October 26th House of Commons motion, and that the total time allotted for opening statements be limited to 5 minutes each, for each witness, up to a maximum of 20 minutes in total, to ensure adequate time for questions to be posed by committee members. For the first hour on the meeting scheduled for June 11th, 14th, 18th, and 21st, 2021, each political party represented on the committee be given leave to invite 1 witness of their choosing to direct issues related to, but not limited to, the federal government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the total time allotted for opening statements be limited to 5 minutes by witnesses to ensure adequate time for questions be posed by committee members. For the second hour on the meeting scheduled for June 11th, 14th, 18th, and 21st, 2021, the Deputy Minister of Health Canada, the Deputy Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, the Deputy Minister of Public Services and Procurement, the President of the Public Health Agency of Canada, the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada, the Vice President of Logistics and Operations for the Public Health Agency of Canada, and the head of the National Advisory Committee on Immunization be invited to discuss issues related to, but not limited to, the federal government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, that the Minister of Health be in attendance for at least one of these meetings, that the meeting that the Minister of Health is in attendance be held on a Friday, be 3 hours in length, that the Minister and officials be in attendance for 2 consecutive hours, and that the total time allotted for opening statements by officials and the Minister during this portion of the meeting be limited to 5 minutes by witnesses, up to a maximum of 20 minutes in total, to ensure adequate time for questions to be posed by committee members.
Thank you, Ms. Rempel-Garner. Mr. Davies, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to speak to the motion very, very briefly and then move an amendment. Having listened to the concerns expressed by my colleagues at the meeting on Friday, obviously this motion here does one thing that's essential, which is it proposes further dates with a more updated calendar, since the motion on Friday would have allocated meetings for for Monday and for this Friday. So it had to be changed, but I did hear the concerns of some members of the committee, 2 of which were that deputy ministers were very busy people, and it was seen that having 4 meetings with the deputy ministers at Health Committee may be too taxing on them given their responsibilities and duties. And the second concern I heard was a desire for more witnesses, Canadians or stakeholders or experts or otherwise. So, I'm going to amend this motion to respect those wishes. Essentially, I'll just explain it in plain English, and then I'll read the motion into the record. Essentially, what my amendment will do is keep this Friday for the PMPRB meeting. And I think there's a consensus around the room that we will each have 2 witnesses each, effectively combining 2 meetings into one, and that meeting will be extended for 3 hours so that we can have a fulsome discussion. That then completely honors the motion of my colleague Luc Thériault. Then what would happen is it would allocate the following Monday to be a meeting for the law clerk and the clerk of the Privy Council to deal with documents. And then of the remaining 4 meetings, the first 3 meetings would be, the first hour would be 1 witness from each party, and then the second hour would be the deputy ministers. And then the very last meeting, which is on June 21st, there would be no deputy ministers. There would only be witnesses where each party would have 2. So really what my motion does is it removes the deputy ministers from having to attend 4 meetings down to 3. And by adding the extra witnesses on the last meeting, it increases the number of witnesses that we'll be able to hear from. I would just finally say that this motion does just put everything under the general rubric of COVID. So I think it allows each party and each person to put forward whatever witnesses they believe are important. I've heard it expressed. There's some members that have a great interest in long-term care. Others may have other issues they want. And I think this gives the flexibility to call the witnesses you want. So, and I, not to have a spoiler alert, but I understand that there may be a further amendment to this that may improve my amendment, but I'll move mine into the record now so we can deal with that and deal with any further amendments that need to happen. So I move that the motion be amended by deleting all the words after the second paragraph and substituting the following. For the first hour of the meeting scheduled on June 11, 14, and 18, 2021, each political party represented on the committee be given leave to invite 1 witness of their choosing to discuss issues related to, but not limited to, the federal government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the total time allotted for opening statements be limited to 5 minutes by witnesses to ensure adequate time for questions to be posed by committee members. And for the second hour for these meetings, the Deputy Minister of Health Canada, the Deputy Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, the Deputy Minister of Public Services and Procurement, the President of the Public Health Agency of Canada, the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada, the Vice President of Logistics and Operations for the Public Health Agency of Canada, and the Head of the National Advisory Committee on Immunization be invited to discuss issues related to, but not limited to, the federal government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, provided that for one of the meetings scheduled on any of the June 11, 14, or 18, 2021, the supplementary estimates A be discussed and disposed of, and that the Minister of Health be in attendance for this meeting with her officials, including the Deputy Minister of Health Canada, the President of the Public Health Agency of Canada, the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada, the Vice President of Logistics and Operations for the Public Health Agency of Canada, and that the Head of the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, the Deputy Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, and the Deputy Minister of Public Services and Procurement also be in attendance, that all witnesses be in attendance for at least 2 consecutive hours, and that the total time allotted for opening statements be limited to 10 minutes in total to ensure adequate time for questions to be posed by committee members, and that for the meeting on June 21st, each political party represented on the committee be given leave to invite 2 witnesses of their choosing to discuss issues related to, but not limited to, the federal government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the total time allotted for opening statements be limited to 5 minutes by each witness, or witness group to ensure adequate time for questions to be posed by committee members. Finally, colleagues, you'll know that the one thing that's in there is whichever meeting that the Minister of Health chooses to come from, because it's in the second hour of the meeting after we've heard the first hour of witnesses, by changing that wording, say they'll be here for 2 hours, that ensures that that meeting will be a 3-hour meeting so that we have ample opportunity to question the minister, and she will be appearing on supplementary estimates. So I would take it that that meeting would probably have to be on a Friday, because I think that's the only day that we can get a 3-hour meeting on. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. Can you submit that in writing to the clerk as well?
Yes,
would you
I
happen
will.
to have that in French as well?
I do.
Okay, so if you could get that to the clerk, he can distribute it to all the members ASAP. So thank you.
Point of order, Chair. I think the clerk might already have it.
Okay, well,
Conveniently,
that would be great. Things happen like that.
Things happen. Okay. He might have it in both official languages already.
Okay, so. Mr. Clerk, if you do have it, please distribute it to the members. So next up, after Mr. Davies, I have Mr. Kellaway. Did you wish to speak on Mr. Davies' amendment?
I think so, and it probably does touch to some degree on Michelle's main amendment, but I'll be brief. Number one, Don, I think you deserve a glass of water or a large bottle of water after that. So I won't take up too much time. So, you know, we've been talking a lot about the issues contained in the 106.4, and I think I think we have agreement, or we're really almost there in terms of coming to some kind of conclusion here. So, which is really beneficial. And what I normally did in my past when I taught at University of Calgary or elsewhere in Cape Breton, I kind of wanted to try to sum up the main components of what I'm hearing. And Don and Michelle, please, correct me if I'm wrong. I know there's a lot in what you said, Don, but I just want to kind of maybe bring it down to just some modular points. We have one PMPR meeting for 3 hours. Following that, we would have 3 meetings with the witnesses for the first hour, and then I believe the deputy ministers for the second hour. For these meetings, each party would select one witness. I don't think that's changed. In addition, we would have one 3-hour meeting with the minister, and one meeting with another one of the officials that was in the motion. So it seems like we're really trending towards that right spot from what I'm seeing. And I am going to, after I finish speaking, which will be in a few moments, read Don's sub-amendment or amendment to it to see if it kind of captures what we're hoping to achieve here. But I think if I can just go back, I don't know if I can ask through you, Chair, to Don, is that basically kind of the meat and the guts to what we're talking about here?
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please do.
Pretty close, Mike. And again, I understand that there may be a further tweak we want to make to this, but we're sort of going step by step. But yeah. Basically what my amendment would do is say this Friday, it nails down this Friday for the PMPRB for 3 hours,
right? 2
witnesses each. Then the following Monday would be the law clerk and the clerk of Privy Council on documents. And then, so that's 2 meetings done. Then the next 3 meetings would be that structure of first hour is a witness from each party, and then the second hour being the deputy ministers.
Mm-hmm.
One of those 3 meetings, the minister, we invite the minister to come to, and we don't know which one that will be, but it likely would have to be it has to be on a Friday.
Right.
And she would come for the 2 hours. On top of that 1 hour, so that would be a 3-hour meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last meeting, the 6th meeting, which is it specifies on June 21st, is just a plain witness meeting with 2 witnesses from each party. So I think you had it, but sorry if I didn't quite get it, but I think it's important to be clear.
Okay, no, I appreciate it, Don, and I appreciate a cliffhanger to come. It's reminds me of those serials back in the 30s and 40s. No, I think I just wanted to make those comments and try to capture in my own mind kind of where I think we're going, which I think is in a better spot than we were on last week. and just to kind of capture the key elements of what you're proposing in the amendment. So no, I appreciate that. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Kellaway. We go now to Dr. Pawlowski, please.
Yes, I wanted to make an amendment too, but I wish to do so after we've dealt with Don's amendment, as we want our amendment to apply to the motion as a whole. I'd like to note in passing that Mike Kellaway said that when he taught at University of Calgary and elsewhere in Cape Breton, thereby implying that Calgary was part of Cape Breton, which I'm glad to see Cape Breton is expanding its borders across the country there, Mike.
Clearly an expansionist government there. Mr. Barlow, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I didn't mean to keep my hand up. I'll just wait till everyone's done there. Sorry about that.
No worries. Madame Gaudreau, la parole.
Ms. Gaudreau, you have the floor now. Yes. If I may provide my opinion, the result is what's important. With the analysis of the proposed amendment, the result seems good. What's important as well was the proposal by my colleague, Mr. Theriault, because if I'm correct, there's a deadline. It's not in the amendment. You can let me know. But I'm pleased that that's still there for June 11th. And June 4th, rather. And I'm looking forward to hear others' opinion because that is fine with the goal that we are looking to achieve. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Gaudreau.
Thank you, Ms. Gaudreau.
Seeing no further hands up, we can proceed with the vote on Mr. Davies' amendment. Mr. Clerk, if you would please conduct the vote.
Ms. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Kellaway?
Oui.
Mr. Pawlowski?
Yes.
Ms. Sidhu?
Yes.
Mr. Van Bynen?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Mr. D'Entremont?
Oui.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Ms. Rampel Garner?
Yes.
Madame Gaudreau?
Oui.
Mr. Davies?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, 11 yeas.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The amendment carries. We'll go now to Mr. or Dr. Pawlowski. I believe you indicated you wish to make a further amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the following amendment, that all dates be removed from the motion with the exception of the date for the PMPRB meeting, which is to occur this Friday for 3 hours. I believe this leaves the minister still appearing on a Friday with that change as stated. So.
Thank you, Dr. Pawlowski. Wait a minute, I've lost my participant screen here. We have Ms. Rumpel-Garner, your hand up. Go ahead, please.
I guess I'm concerned that with this amendment, by removing the dates and not specifying that these meetings happen before the end of day on June 21st, that might allow for wiggle room on when the meetings are going to be scheduled. So I'm wondering if the mover can clarify what the intention of the motion was, if it was to, in fact, have these meetings scheduled before the end of day on June 21st. I realize that the motion is on the floor, and I guess I would ask a clerk procedurally if you can amend a sub-amendment. I think you have to have one on the floor, but we would then be, if we were to support this, we would then put forward another a sub-amendment that would clarify that these meetings would be required to take place before the end of day on June 21st.
My understanding is that we can have a sub-amendment. And certainly it's my understanding as the chair that all these meetings need to be conducted prior to when the House rises. So just
with that clarity, then I would move a sub-amendment an amendment to the sub-amendment, Chair, I believe that's the correct, so that at the end, I move that at the end of the proposed amendment, the following be added, but that the meetings referenced in this motion be scheduled during regularly scheduled meeting slots prior to the end of day on June 21st, 2021.
Thank you very much. That's just a sub-amendment because we're in an amendment, not an amendment to an, anyway, I gotcha. So we now have this debate on Ms. Rumpel-Garner's sub-amendment. Mr. Davies, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think we can probably dispense with this just with a simple understanding so that we're all on the same page, that the second paragraph of the motion that remains unamended says that the following regularly scheduled meetings of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Health be programmed as follows. The intention, I hope it's what the consensus is that what we want to do by Dr. Pawlowski's amendment is the meetings will happen on our regular scheduled time between now and June 21st. All we're doing is saying that the first meeting, the only meeting that's scheduled for the topic on the date is the one for this Friday. And then I suppose we leave it up to the clerk to determine when those other meetings will be. We're going to have a meeting on the documents. We're going to have 3 meetings with the deputy ministers, and we're going to have a meeting just with our witnesses. But we're not allocating those meetings to a date certain. Is that my understanding, Dr. Pawlowski, of what we're doing? Because if we have that understanding, and of course with the understanding that as you said, the meeting with the minister has to be on a Friday, or we can't get to 3 hours. That's the intent?
That is the intent. We're not trying to get out of any of these meetings. It's just a matter of the timing of the meetings, and we just wanted to make sure that we had the PMPRB and we have the minister on the Friday, and then the other dates to be set by the clerk as agreed upon.
Right. Well, if I may, the only other thing that I wanted to mention was, as a matter just of practicality, I believe the clerk has already lined up witnesses for this Friday for PMPRB, so I think that's taken care of, but Monday's fast approaching. And it being Wednesday, I do think that in fairness to the clerk and to all of us really, we should have some idea what meeting we want to have on Monday. If it is going to be like the original motion called for that meeting to be the clerk. If it's not going to be that meeting, which is fine with me, if it's not, that means it would have to either be one of the meetings where we each put 2 witnesses forward, or the first hour with the deputy ministers and the first hour with our witness and the second hour with the deputy ministers. I think before we end this meeting today, we'll have to know what that meeting is, because we'll have to get our witnesses in very quickly. I would say probably by the end of tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. We'll put a pin on that request and see where we end up with this motion. We have Ms. Rumpel-Garner again, please.
I just wanted to reiterate that I would like my sub-amendment voted on. It seems like a pretty simple technical request that gives clarity to the motion.
I'm 100%. I like following through so we know clearly what we're doing. So the discussion remains on the sub-amendment. We have Madame Gaudreau, à vous maintenant.
Ms. Gaudreau, you have the floor. Yes, I agree. I understand the issue of witness, minister availability. So once again, the goal is what's important. If it will allow the committee to work more quickly, more efficiently for the well-being of the people we represent, I'm all in favor. I think we're off to a good start, even though there are some sub-amendments. Thank you.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you.
Back to Dr. Pawlowski. Dr. Pawlowski, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to require a formal motion as to what happens on the Monday meeting, but I'm I'm certainly happy with getting some witnesses and getting back to actually studying COVID again. I think we haven't had a genuine meeting about COVID for a while, so I'd be happy, and I think we'd be happy to try to get some witnesses together for the meeting on Monday. I don't know whether that has to be formal or that can be an informal agreement.
Mr. Chair, the law clerk and all the witnesses for for Monday have been contacted by me just to give them an heads up that I was going to invite them for Monday. So they are prepared to come on Monday.
All right, thank you. We will leave the discussion and the vote at this point on the sub-amendment. So the sub-amendment is on whether to add the text that Ms. Rempel-Garner has proposed to provide that these meetings happen on prior to the whatever the 23rd of December, or well, certainly before December, but before the end of September, before we rise. So that's the vote in question, and we have Ms. Rempel-Garner. Your hand is up again, please.
Sorry, that was by mistake. My apologies.
Okay.
I didn't take it down.
Very well. So now we have Mr. Davies. Mr. Davies, go ahead.
Sorry, it was just that last comment you made, Mr. Chair, that confused me. And maybe I'm misunderstanding Ms. Rempel's amendment, but I heard you say that provided these meetings occur by September.
No, I misspoke. I was, her amendment is that they happen prior to when we rise this June, right?
Can we just, you know, I mean, I don't even know if we need this necessarily in writing. I'm happy to do it if we want, but are we just not in agreement that our regularly scheduled meetings between now and June 21st will be allocated this way?
I think
Monday,
that's
Friday, Monday, Friday, Monday, Friday, Monday,
yeah,
and then we're just leaving the clerk open to have flexibility. I mean,
absolutely. And
nodding.
It's my fault that I've misrepresented or misstated what the amendment is, or sub-amendment is. But that's exactly what Ms. Rempel-Garner has proposed in actually better language. So,
okay, and just finally, just before we vote on this, I presume that after we will have to come back to the issue of what we do on Monday.
Absolutely. Once we decide how we're proceeding, we will carry on. So. So seeing no more hands, I will call the vote on Ms. Rempel-Garner's sub-amendment. Mr. Clerk, if you please.
Ms. O'Connell.
Yes.
Mr. Kellaway.
Yes.
Mr. Pulaski.
Yes.
Ms. Sidhu.
Yes.
Mr. Van Bynen.
Yes.
Mr. Barlow.
Yes.
Monsieur d'Entremont.
Oui.
Mr. McGuire.
Yes.
Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Yes.
Madame Gaudreau.
Oui.
Mr. Davies.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, unanimous. So 11 yeas, 0.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Therefore, the sub-amendment carries. We go now back to Dr. Pulowski's amendment, which was to remove the dates. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none. Ms. Rempel-Garner, please.
Sorry, I jumped the gun. Sure.
Okay. Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to conduct the vote. This is on Dr. Pulowski's amendment.
Ms. O'Connell.
Yes.
Mr. Kellaway.
Oui.
Mr. Pulaski.
Yes.
Ms. Sidhu.
Yes.
Mr. Van Bynen.
Yes.
Mr. Barlow.
Yes.
Mr. d'Entremont.
Oui.
Mr. McGuire.
Yes.
Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Yes.
Madame Gaudreau.
Oui.
Mr. Davies.
Oui.
Mr. Chair, unanimous.
Thank you. So that brings us back to the main motion of Ms. Rempel-Garner as amended several times. So is there any further discussion on the main motion as amended? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call to conduct the vote, please.
Ms. O'Connell.
Yes.
Mr. Kellaway.
Yes.
Mr. Pulaski.
Yes.
Ms. Sidhu.
Yes.
Mr. Van Bynen.
Yes.
Mr. Barlow.
Yes.
Monsieur d'Entremont.
Oui.
Mr. McGuire.
Yes.
Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Yes.
Madame Gaudreau,
Oui.
Mr. Davies,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, unanimous.
Thank you. So the motion as amended carries. So that leaves us the question of what to do on Monday. I'm very happy to work with the clerk and the various officials involved to plan out the next several weeks and do things as best we can. Miss Rempel-Garner, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, sure. Just on that point, Chair. So just to clarify, perhaps a question to the clerk. So the law clerk and other officials would be available on Monday for a meeting. That seems reasonable to me. I would look for consensus from other colleagues, but first for clarity from the clerk that they are available on Monday.
Yes.
I know from the clerk that he has approached them. I'm not sure that all of the witnesses that are requested in that meeting are going to be available on that day, but I would like to also be able to adjust the schedule according to the availability of ministers and so forth for the other meetings as well, so that we can properly deal with all the matters that are before us. So that being the case, I would ask the members to submit their witnesses for Monday, assuming it is not the clerk, and then we'll do the best we can to make this give this motion reality.
So, Mr. Chair, I must inform the committee that I will make the request for a 3-hour meeting for Friday, but the whips has to decide at the end, so I don't know if we'll get the permission to extend for 1 hour, for 3 hours. Just want to inform the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and we will try to adjust the schedule however we can, or fit in that extra hour if need be somewhere else to make it happen. But we'll do the best we can. So, Dr. Pawlowski, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like the Monday meeting to be back to COVID. I don't think we've actually talked about COVID for a couple of weeks. There are some issues that have come up in the meantime. For example, mixing and matching vaccines is kind of a new strategy. There's several other issues that we haven't addressed because of what's happened in the last number of weeks. I think we've all agreed, and in previous speeches in our last meetings, that we've been taken away a little bit from our duty, which is dealing with COVID in a time of a pandemic. So I would hope that our next meeting, we actually get back to business and dealing with COVID. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor. I'll go to Mr. Davies, please.
Thank you. So that being the case, I think we have to know what the meeting is going to be on Monday. If it's not going to be the documents issue, then the only two choices are we either have the meeting on Monday where we each call 2 witnesses, or we call one of those meetings where we have 1 witness in the first hour with the deputy ministers in the second. I'm going to sort of ask the clerk which he prefers, and I guess canvass my colleagues as well, which they'd prefer. Because we really have to, if we're going to use the Monday for that, we have to have our witnesses in by tomorrow, for sure, by the end of tomorrow, in order to give the clerk a chance to notify the witnesses. I mean, imagine you're calling witnesses that don't even know they're being called on a Thursday to testify on a Monday.
And headsets also.
Morning. Pardon me?
The headsets is an issue. I have to ship them a pair of headsets. So
I was just going to say, so the other part of it, I'm easy with either of those options, whether it's 2 witnesses or 1. But if we do the 1, then it's a fairly healthy list of deputy ministers. I'd like to ask the clerk, does he think that he can get the vast bulk of the deputy ministers to the meeting on Monday if he requests them tomorrow?
Well, let's leave that up to something that we can work out, the chair and the clerk together with the officials, and see what we can work out as a schedule. I would agree with you that you should have your witnesses for Monday together by tomorrow. That will give us the scope of action that we'll need.
But 1 or 2, Mr. Chair?
Let's make it 2. Whatever works, we can do either way, but
okay.
I just want to be able to schedule the meetings coming forward according to the availability of all the different parties. There's a lot of there's a lot of chess pieces on the board that we'd like to get these meetings to be as effective as possible. So we want to make sure that all the people who need to be in them are available to do so. So please do get your witnesses in to the clerk by tomorrow, and then we'll do the best we can to make all of this stuff happen in good order.
Well, might I suggest, Mr. Chair, then that by the end of tomorrow we have our 2 witnesses in by the end of the day, prioritized, and then if the meeting on Monday is only one witness in the first hour, with the DMs in second, the clerk will note a schedule to contact the first witness.
Absolutely, that certainly sounds like.
In fact, maybe the clerk, that gives the clerk the flexibility to pick one or the other.
Yeah. I think that's a great suggestion, and I think that's what we should go with. Ms. O'Connell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually going to suggest that I think committee members should probably get their witnesses in. The fact that these meetings are no longer kind of themed, that providing, as Don said, if you want to put a priority list, so that the whole point of not being fixed dates was for flexibility based on attendance. So if you have, even more than, I would suggest, even if you have more than 2 witnesses, to maybe send it in. The clerk can start sending the headsets, even if, they're not until next week or the week after. It gives us, the clerk something to work off of. So I think we should be prepared for that, given the fact that we need to be a little bit flexible of schedules and house resources, et cetera. But I would suggest we put our priority lists in of witnesses, and then if multiple are available, those parties can decide which ones on which date, whatnot, but you can't do so until you get them in and get those headsets out.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connell. I'll go back to Mr. Davies, please.
Thank you. I think that's a really good suggestion by Ms. O'Connell. What this motion means that we've passed means that we will have 5 witnesses. There'll be 1 meeting with 2 and 3 with 1. So I would suggest that it not be a requirement necessarily, but perhaps we should try to get 5 to 8 witnesses in by the end of tomorrow. I want some flexibility though, because if I'm going to be rushed to put 5, I haven't thought of all 5 witnesses yet. I can easily put in a couple, but I think if we try to put in 5 witnesses in priority order, then that might be helpful for the clerk. The other thing I was just going to mention, Mr. Chair, though, is I think it will help the committee if what you do is over the next few days come back with a schedule of how you want the next 5 meetings to go. I don't think we can know this meeting by meeting. It's hard to prepare that way. So not to put a deadline on you, but it would be helpful if like early next week you had some basic map of how the meetings are going to go.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. I 100% agree, and I'll do the best I can. I will talk to the clerk and work with all the various moving pieces involved here and make sure that we can do the best we can. That being the case, seeing no more hands, I believe we have reached a meeting of minds. So therefore, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.